Welcome back, guys. In today's episode, I'm sharing 8 true disturbing stories about living in deep Appalachia. We've got a story where a surveyor finds a perfectly preserved cabin with no records, no wires, and 3 knocks from inside the wall. And another where a lineman follows a trail of red yarn into the trees and finds something waiting that's not quite human. So make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Share this with your friends and let me know where you're watching from. Thanks. Now, let's get into it. I was 41 and working as a field tech for a regional utility company that handled line maintenance all over eastern Tennessee. Most days, I was out by myself driving rough back roads and logging any issues. Down lines, busted transformers, tree damage, whatever needed reporting. I liked it that way. I didn't mind being alone. The radio was enough company, and the quiet beat sitting in an office. My territory covered parts of Hawkins, Hancock, and a little edge of Claiborne County. It got pretty remote out there. Tight switchbacks through mountain gaps, no cell towers for miles, and locals who weren't too eager to see unfamiliar trucks on their land. You learn not to knock unless the meter's spinning. Anyway, this one call came in just after a bad storm system rolled through. Dispatch handed me a printout with a set of coordinates, said the line had gone out near a place called Green Hollow. Told me the last tech they sent out there couldn't locate the site and had to turn around. I asked if he got lost or spooked, and the dispatcher just shrugged and said it was unclear. That wasn't exactly reassuring. They gave me a laminated topo map and a printed route sheet, which is usually a sign there's no GPS signal or cell coverage where I'm headed. I loaded the ATV onto the trailer behind the truck, packed a couple spare radios, tools, food, water, the usual, and rolled out before sunrise. First couple hours were easy. Highway turned to gravel, then gravel to dirt. I passed a handful of old places, cabins sunk into the trees, cars half-eaten by rust and weeds, sheds with no roofs, the kind of stuff you get used to seeing out there. Eventually, even those faded away. The trail got narrower. My side mirrors were brushing trees and the undercarriage kept knocking on rocks and roots. I came to a point where the path was just too overgrown for the ATV. Map said the transformer was still about half a mile ahead. I killed the engine, took a quick inventory, and started hiking. The woods were dense, not the scenic kind you hike on a weekend. These felt like they hadn't been touched in decades. Every step made this loud crunch underfoot. I tried to move quiet, but the leaf litter was thick and the undergrowth was bone dry. After about half an hour of climbing and winding through the brush, I crested a ridge and figured I'd see the box mounted somewhere nearby. But there was nothing. No pole, no equipment, just fresh boot prints in the dirt, not mine. Leading downhill, they looked recent, edges still sharp, not sunken in. So I followed them. The slope was steep, real steep. I had to lean forward and grab tree trunks to keep from sliding. My boots skidded on loose rock. At one point, I nearly lost my footing entirely and slid a few feet before catching myself. The trail twisted and dropped into this hollow I swear wasn't marked on any of the maps. And right there, against the far wall of a collapsed-looking log cabin, was the transformer box, just sitting there, like someone had dragged it down off the hill and leaned it up like a suitcase. I remember stopping and just staring for a second, thinking, what the hell is this? The cabin didn't look livable. Roof was mostly gone, logs black with water damage, front door hanging by one hinge and rocking gently. But it was open. And the box? It still had our sticker on it. Intact wiring, nothing smashed, just moved. Against my better judgment, I stepped inside. It was dark, but slivers of sunlight cut through the gaps in the roof and lit the dust in the air. Floorboards groaned under every step. It smelled like mold and animal musk. The air was stale, heavy, like no one had opened the place in decades. I crouched down to get a closer look at the transformer box. Wires were pulled clean, not yanked, not cut. Whoever did it knew what they were doing. Then I heard it, footsteps, slow, above me, which didn't make sense because from the outside the cabin didn't look like it had a second floor. No window, no ladder, no visible upper level. But there they were. Step, pause, drag, like something heavy was being pulled across the floor. I froze, tried to listen closer, thought maybe it was an animal, a raccoon or something caught up in the rafters. Then again, step, drag, too heavy for a raccoon, too measured to be random. I stood up straight and called out, "Hello? I'm with Tri-County Utilities, just doing a site check." No answer, but the movement stopped. I backed toward the door, eyes still on the ceiling. That's when I noticed something on the inside wall, right next to the door frame. Scratches, not symbols, not writing. Just a chaotic mess of shallow, deliberate slashes. Some long, some short, overlapping. So many it looked like the wood was fraying. I was halfway through the door when I saw him, barefoot, standing maybe 20 feet from the cabin, dressed in what looked like a patchwork of animal hide and torn cloth, hair in greasy ropes, skin so pale it looked powdery. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at me. I raised my hands, kept my voice low. "I'm just leaving," I said. Then someone else stepped out behind him, bigger, same clothes, same dead stare. Then another. I turned and started walking back toward the ridge, slowly, deliberately, not running, not yet. Then I heard footsteps, behind me, slow at first, but matched to mine. They were following. I kept walking, eyes on the path, heart hammering so loud I thought they'd hear it. Then a branch snapped just behind me. I ran, didn't look back, just ran. I barreled up the slope, scraping my arms on bark, slipping on moss, crashing through brush. Every breath felt like knives in my chest. I could hear them, multiple footsteps now, not running, but fast enough, keeping pace, cracking twigs, brushing against trees. Then I saw the ATV, parked like a lifeline between me and whatever was chasing. I jumped on, kicked it to life and gunned the throttle. Didn't even check my mirrors, just tore out of there, bouncing over roots and rocks, branches whipping past. I didn't slow down until I was back on a real service road. Got a bar signal and called it in. Told dispatch everything, about the box, about the cabin, about the people, if you could call them that. They filed a report, standard protocol. I followed up a few days later. Nothing. A week after that, I cornered my supervisor and asked why nobody had gone out to retrieve the equipment. He just gave me this look, flat, tired, and said, "That area's complicated. We're rerouting that section." That was all he said. No investigation, no retrieval, just forget it. I've gone back since, not far, just up to where the trail used to split. Hollow's not there anymore. I swear, the ridge looks different, like the forest just rearranged itself. But I know what I saw. That cabin wasn't a shelter. It wasn't some hermit's retreat. It was bait. And whoever or whatever dragged that box down there wasn't trying to steal it. They were using it to bring someone else, someone who wouldn't be missed for a few hours. I'm a surveyor, picked it up right out of tech school. Figured it'd be a solid way to stay out of an office. You'd be surprised how steady the work is if you're okay being alone in the middle of nowhere. It's not exactly a conversation starter, but I don't mind that. I like maps, I like solving puzzles with land, and I don't mind being out where the only sounds are your own boots and the occasional squirrel freaking out for no reason. A couple years ago, I took a job in this remote corner of eastern Kentucky, Briar Hollow, Clay County. If that name doesn't sound familiar, that's kind of the point. It's the kind of place you only find if you're trying to, and even then you might not. Most GPS systems can't keep a signal there. No real roads once you get past the first ridge, just gravel and dirt and a lot of guessing. There's a gas station out that way, if you can call it that. They sell diesel, deer jerky, fishing lures, and not much else. The guy running it had this glass eye that pointed about 2 inches off where he was actually looking. He had the social energy of a haunted grandfather clock. Nice enough, I think, but his total vocabulary might have been 20 words. I ended up renting this old trailer just off a hollow, Real secluded, you could sit on the porch and not hear a single thing. Not cars, not dogs, not even wind sometimes. It backed right up into the trees, thick enough that by late afternoon the whole place looked like it was sliding into night early. That actually didn't bother me. I liked it. No neighbors, no distractions. I've never been a bar guy or a party guy. If I have coffee and a working stove, I'm good. The job was simple enough on paper. A woman named Meredith Holloway called me up. Said she inherited a piece of land up here after her uncle passed. She lived down in Tennessee, Johnson City, I think, and she'd never seen the land herself, just had the deed and an old plat map. Wanted it surveyed before putting it up for sale. The records showed a couple of old buildings on the property, nothing fancy. One cabin, maybe a shed or two, all dated back to the 40s. But no roads led to it, not even a real trail. Just forest wedged between two ridges. That meant hiking in, GPS if it held, and a lot of marking points the slow way. First day I parked about a mile out and walked in. Took me most of the afternoon just to get to the northern boundary. The woods were dense but manageable. Not eerie, not yet. Just quiet in the way that deep woods are. I passed a few relics, broken fences, rotted coops, something that had once been a barn now swallowed in vines. No birds, no bugs, no sounds, just empty. I marked 4 points, standard stuff. Didn't feel weird, just felt old, like nobody had cared about this land in decades. Second day, I decided to come in from the east. There wasn't really a trail, just a game path that looked like it hadn't seen much traffic, but I figured it'd save time. That's when I started to notice something was off. The trees were crooked, not snapped or storm damaged, just grown that way, subtly twisted. The trunks curved, all tilting away from something. Not random either. Every tree on that slope leaned slightly outward, like the center of the hollow was pushing them away. I remember stopping and just staring at it, trying to talk myself out of reading too much into it. Trees can do weird things. Slopes, water tables, wind patterns, all that. But I hadn't seen it anywhere else in the area, only here. I didn't turn back though. I figured I'd log it mentally, finish the loop, and get out. About an hour in, I stepped into a clearing that wasn't marked on any of my documents, not even a hint of it. No records, no satellite image. Dead center was a cabin, not collapsed, not overgrown. The roof looked fine, windows intact. The porch steps weren't broken. It looked like someone had cleaned it recently. There was a pile of fresh-cut firewood still sharp at the edges. A tin bucket next to the stairs, half full of water. Clean rabbit cages stacked along one wall. A clothesline stretched across the porch, clothespins still clipped on, like someone had just taken the laundry down, but no wires. No generator hum. No sign of a truck or ATV. It looked lived in, but frozen. I didn't get close. I stayed behind the trees and circled wide. I've been around enough remote areas to know you don't walk up on someone's property uninvited, especially not in places where people live deliberately off-grid. You don't know if they're friendly, paranoid, or both. As I stepped into the brush to continue my path, I heard something that made my blood run cold. 3 knocks. From inside the cabin, not on the door, on the wall. Solid, deliberate, evenly spaced. Whoever was in there knew I was outside. I froze. Waited for footsteps, a shout, anything. But nothing followed, just silence. I backed out slow. Watched the windows the whole time. Took the longest route back I could. Cut through a creek bed, scrambled up a ridge. Didn't stop moving until I saw the gravel road again. That night I sat in the trailer with every curtain shut and a flashlight in one hand, thinking through it all. I had no proof of anything. Could have been a hermit, a squatter, maybe even a hunter with an old family spot. But those knocks were so purposeful, not surprised, not accidental, purposeful. Still, I showed up again the next morning, left even earlier, parked farther away. I was determined to avoid that cabin altogether. Just finish marking the points and get out for good. I was making decent time, hugging the ridgeline. Then I saw something hanging from a tree ahead. It was a deer, upside down, back legs tied with rope. Not a hunter's gut job, no clean cuts. The chest was torn open like someone had split the rib cage by brute force. Ribs spread, the sternum shattered. Blood dried black along the fur, and the smell. God, the smell. It was thick, greasy. Flies swarmed like a single moving organism. I've hunted, I've seen all kinds of field dressing. This wasn't that. There were no drag marks, no prints, just the deer, displayed like some kind of warning or message. I stood there staring at it longer than I should have. My brain didn't want to process it. Eventually, I snapped out of it. I should have left. But I didn't. I was halfway through the job, and maybe I was trying to prove something to myself. I moved faster after that, marked points without double-checking readings. Just wanted to be done. That's when I heard the footsteps. Light, deliberate, circling me. Whoever it was wasn't charging or sneaking. They were pacing a slow, steady perimeter. I dropped behind a stump and killed the GPS. Held my breath. The steps made a full loop around me, then stopped. No retreating, just silence. Then the scraping started, metal on bark, long, slow strokes, not cutting, just dragging, like they were testing the tree. It went on for 10 seconds, then silence again. I didn't wait, I ran. Left everything, my tools, my notes, my poles, just ran. The forest didn't echo, so every snap of a branch underfoot sounded like a firecracker. I was bleeding by the time I made it to the road. Scratches, cuts, maybe some bruised ribs. Didn't stop, just got in the truck, locked the doors, and sat there shaking until my hands worked again. I filed a partial report, told the clerk I'd misjudged the terrain, blamed it on underbidding and time constraints. They didn't ask questions. I don't think they wanted to. 2 nights later, around 3 a.m., I woke up to tapping, not on the door, on the back window of the trailer. Soft, steady, same rhythm as those knocks. I didn't move, just stared at the ceiling, hoping it would stop. Eventually it did. I got up, looked out the side window through a gap in the curtain. Someone stood at the edge of the trees. Couldn't see the face clearly, but he was tall, shirtless, pale, and holding something. It was one of my survey poles, the ones I'd left behind in the woods. He didn't wave, didn't speak, just stood there with it like a staff. After a few minutes, he turned and walked back into the woods. I moved out that week. Didn't take anything but my clothes and tools. Let the landlord keep the deposit. Got a 1-bedroom above a bakery in Lexington where the worst thing I hear at night is delivery trucks or somebody yelling about parking. I still do survey work, but only in city limits now. Places with lights, sidewalks, neighbors. I don't go near the deep hollows anymore. I'm a park ranger. Been working out in the backwoods of eastern Kentucky for over 12 years now. Most people burn out after a couple seasons, get tired of the isolation, or just decide they've had enough of bears, blisters, and tourists asking where the gift shop is. I stayed. I like the quiet. No meetings, no small talk, no emails or team-building hikes. Just me, the trees, and a radio that mostly stayed silent. I cover a stretch of national forest most folks don't even realize is public land. It's rugged terrain, steep ridges, rock falls, thickets so dense you can't see your own boots. There's no cell service after the first hill, and the trails, if you can call them that, are just old logging roads from the 40S. It's not the kind of place you wander into by accident. Locals know better than to hike that far out, and when someone does ignore the signs and disappear into the brush, I usually end up getting the call. Last October, late afternoon, dispatch buzzed in. Some solo hiker, young guy from Ohio, I think, had reported a destroyed campsite about 6 miles past Gator Ridge. That's well off trail. You don't just stumble out there unless you're seriously lost or trying to disappear. The guy was rattled, said the tent looked like it'd been slashed open, sleeping bag half dragged out, gear torn up, no blood, no body, just wreckage. He didn't stick around, dropped a GPS pin and booked it back to the nearest ranger station. I grabbed my kit, logged the coordinates, and set out. It was already 4:30 p.m., not ideal, but I figured I'd at least get eyes on the site before full dark. I had a headlamp, a thermal vest, enough gear to get by if I had to camp out. I didn't plan to. I'd done plenty of tougher hikes on shorter notice. The first part of the hike was mostly switchbacks. Tight turns, loose gravel, nothing unusual. I moved fast but careful. Once I hit the ridge, I left the trail behind. Had to rely on a compass and what little evidence the hiker had left behind. Crushed undergrowth, snapped twigs, a faint track line in the moss. The sun was dipping low by the time I reached the site. I had maybe 15 minutes of real light left, not counting whatever I could squeeze from my flashlight. And yeah, it was bad. The tent looked like it had been clawed apart, not cut, not torn by wind, but slashed. One whole side was just gone. No signs of a struggle though, no blood, no scattered gear suggesting a panic. The backpack was tossed a good 20 feet from the tent and its contents were just shredded, not stolen, not rummaged through, destroyed. Even the energy bar wrappers were torn into confetti. I crouched down and started circling. That's when I noticed the boot prints. Size 10 or 11, I'd guess. Deep impressions, headed down the slope. But they weren't consistent. One was sunken way deeper than the next. Like whoever made them was limping hard, or being dragged. I followed the prints for maybe 40 yards. And then they just stopped. No slow fade. No signs of the person turning back. Just nothing. Mid-stride. One last boot print, then clear, undisturbed forest floor. Not even a scuff mark. I stood there a while, just looking at that last footprint. Then I raised my radio and called it in. Told dispatch I was marking the site and heading out. I didn't have the gear or daylight for a proper search, especially not if someone was hurt. I turned back toward the tent. That's when I heard the whistling. Soft, real slow, just 3 notes, high-pitched. Same pattern every time. Not tuneful, just deliberate. It didn't echo like a bird call would. It didn't even sound like it belonged in the woods. More like it was floating just outside the range of where sound normally goes. I turned with my flashlight. Nothing. I called out, "Hello? This is a park ranger. Are you injured?" His whistling stopped. I waited. Didn't move. I kept scanning the tree line, slowly swinging my light side to side. Took one step toward the tent, then another. The whistle came again, but now it was behind me. I spun around, heart jumping, swept the light fast, chest tight. Still nothing. Just trees, brush, and way too much silence. I raised the radio again. Possible contact, unresponsive, whistling in woods, requesting second unit. There was a crackle, then a hiss. At first I thought it was just static. Then I heard breathing. Deep, slow, like someone was right up against the mic, exhaling straight into it. Then a voice, low and raspy, cut through. "You shouldn't have come here." My hand froze on the radio. I didn't say anything. Didn't move. I just stared into the woods, trying not to blink. Then I ran. I didn't care if I twisted an ankle or dropped my gear. I took off. Light swinging wildly. Every snapped twig sounded like footsteps behind me. I didn't look back, didn't stop, just ran. It took me almost 45 minutes to get to the service road. When I reached my truck, I locked the doors, started the engine, and turned on every external light I had. Sat there staring at the trees with the spotlight on, not breathing, not thinking. Backup rolled in about 30 minutes later. Found me gripping the steering wheel like I was trying to break it off. My sidearm was still in the holster, but the snap was undone. The next morning, I led 2 rangers back out. Full gear. Daylight. I showed them where everything had been, but there was nothing. No tent, no gear, no pack, not even boot prints. The ground looked untouched, like it had never been disturbed. Even the orange tape I'd wrapped around a low-hanging branch was gone. Not snapped or blown away. Gone. Like it had never been tied there. No one said much. We just stood there for a few minutes, then turned back. I logged it as possible wildlife disturbance. No confirmed missing persons. That should have been the end of it. But 2 weeks later, I got assigned fire watch at Lookout Ridge Tower. It's this old wooden structure about 40 feet up with a wraparound deck and a tiny sleeping cot. Beautiful view. You can see the Blue Ridge on a clear day. First night, just after midnight, my radio clicked on. Static. Then that same deep, slow breathing. Then the voice, "You shouldn't have come here." I jumped up, grabbed my rifle, and scanned every window. Nothing. Then the whistle started. Same 3 notes, same cadence. But this time, it was coming from directly below me. I grabbed the spotlight and leaned over the railing, and I saw it. Something was standing at the base of the tower. It was tall, too tall. Pale skin that looked stretched thin, like wax left in the sun. Head tilted back, just staring. Its eyes weren't right, just black. Solid black. No light, no shine, just void. Then it smiled, slow, deliberate, lips pulling back far too wide, teeth too many, way too many. I slammed the hatch shut, locked it, and sat down with my back to the trap door, rifle in my lap. I didn't move until sunrise. Didn't even blink. As soon as I had a signal, I filed for emergency leave. Told him I was sick. I didn't give details. I packed up and drove straight to my brother's place out west. 10 hours, no stops. I haven't been back since. I've lived my whole life out in a holler that winds through Clay County, Kentucky. This place is home in that stubborn kind of way, where folks settle in and only leave if they're forced out. I wasn't any different. Nothing had given me a good enough reason to go. I worked maintenance for a telecom company, the kind of job where you handle just about everything because you're the only guy assigned to the whole mountain region. My main post is an old tower up on Backbone Ridge. It's a long, slow ride up the fire road every morning. Trees closing in so tight overhead, you forget what the sky looks like. I take my ATV, pack my kit, and get to work. The tower's a beast. Rusted, patched together with old bolts, plastic straps, and whatever junk keeps it breathing. Sometimes I think the whole thing's held up more by habit than hardware, but it's important. It pushes signal across 6 counties. If it dies, half the mountain goes quiet. So I run diagnostics, check voltage, swap fried components, give it a good kick now and then, and head down before dark. There's no reception up there, no radio either. Once I get halfway up, the world just stops. No voices, no traffic, just metal humming. And woods so still, it gets under your skin if you linger too long. Then last October, I started seeing odd logs in the system. The pings were tiny, barely formed data packets, malformed, no return paths. It was like something was trying to contact the tower, but didn't speak the right language. Didn't match any device signatures we'd ever used. I sent them over to Lexington and flagged it as unknown. Their response was something between a shrug and a yawn. Probably stray gear, maybe old trackers or experimental wildlife tags. Nothing to worry about, so I let it go. 3 days later, I was riding the trail up and noticed something strange. Red yarn tied around a pine branch right off the main path. Bright red, looked brand new. No fray, no dirt. It stood out in a way nothing up there usually does. I left it alone, figured maybe a forestry marker or some kind of land survey. Then I saw a second ribbon the next day. This one tied around the base of a sapling, right by a switchback. Then a third a little farther down the slope, almost hidden under a patch of laurel. That one gave me pause. Too far off trail. Too intentional. By the 5th day, I couldn't ignore them anymore. I started following them. Not all at once, not like a straight trail. They weren't spaced evenly. Some were just visible through the brush, others I had to backtrack to see. But each one led deeper down the slope into parts of the woods I'd never even thought to explore. No deer prints, no old beer cans or shotgun shells. just silence. And those little red ribbons. I counted 10 of them, and right after the 10th, something shifted. The air smelled wrong. Not just off, not just musty. It had this thick, sticky sweetness like motor oil and rotting fruit had been left in a hot car. I've hunted. I've gutted deer in the cold. This wasn't animal rot. This was chemical and wrong in a way that makes your instincts go stiff. I pulled my shirt up over my face and stepped down into the hollow. That's when I saw the camp. Single canvas tent, old, sagging, caved in from the middle like someone had slept in it too long and left. Mud had eaten into the seams. Scattered around were rusted cans, a blackened frying pan, and a cloudy water jug filled with something thick and dark. But the bones were the centerpiece. They weren't just lying around. They were arranged, circles, spirals, piles. Small bones, maybe raccoon or stray cats. Some were burnt, some bleached white, some tied together with more of that red yarn, bundled like little presents. I stood there frozen, stomach clenched, fingers twitching. Took out my phone and snapped 3 photos before turning around to leave. Then I stopped cold. 2 of the ribbons I passed, gone. Not snapped, not fallen, just gone. Like they'd never been there. I wasn't lost. I knew the path I'd followed. I started retracing my steps and finally found a single piece of yarn in the leaves. It was frayed like someone had sliced it clean. That's when I really started moving. I didn't run, but my legs didn't wait around for second thoughts. Made it back to the fire road right as dusk settled. My ATV wouldn't start. Turned the key, nothing, not even a click. Battery wasn't dead. It was like something had cut the soul out of the machine. I ended up pushing it the whole way down, 2 miles of dirt and rock. When I finally got reception again, I called Travis, my cousin. He showed up without questions, threw the ATV in his truck, and we went home without saying a word. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those little bundles of bone. The next morning, I patched up the ATV, loaded my rifle, a .308 I keep cleaned and zeroed, and rode back up. Needed to know if I'd imagined it all. The ribbons, the bones, the smell, everything was gone. No tent, no bones, no smell, but the dirt was disturbed. Drag marks in the soft soil, like something heavy had been pulled away. Not in a hurry either, like it had time, like it wanted me to see where it had been. I didn't report it, didn't want to explain that in a company portal. That night, something knocked on my window, 3 soft knocks. My side window, not the door. I live alone, no kids. Nearest neighbor lives 3 miles out, and I keep my yard clear. Porch light was already on. I grabbed my shotgun and walked out onto the porch. There was nothing there, no movement, no footprints. But on the mat right at my feet was a bundle. A chunk of antler, worn smooth, wrapped in a red yarn bow. I called Travis again. He drove up, this time with his own rifle. We sat up in the living room, coffee in one hand, guns in the other, watching the tree line. Around 3:00 a.m., we heard it, singing, not lyrics, just these long, slow tones, like a dozen voices humming different tunes at once. It came from behind the shed, that slope where the woods dipped down into a thicket of oaks. The sounds made my skin crawl in a way I can't explain. Travis stood like he was going to walk toward it. I grabbed his arm. No, you're not. We waited until dawn. That afternoon, I bought 6 trail cams, top of the line. Infrared, motion-activated 30-yard detection. I ringed the cabin with them and set 2 more along the tower trail. I needed to know I wasn't losing it. Next morning, I checked the footage. Every camera glitched. At 3:17 a.m. exactly, 11 seconds of static, then a few frozen frames. Something moved through the woods, tall, black shapes, too tall, limbs bending the wrong way. One figure stopped on my porch, right at the edge of the frame. You couldn't see the face, just the arms, long and low, like they didn't have joints. Another cam caught something crawling along the woodpile. Naked, pale, its mouth way too wide. I sent the footage to Lexington. They replied with a canned message, "Looks like firmware issues. Please reinstall." I never responded. The next night, the sounds came back. Closer. The rhythms were sharper, almost musical, but twisted. I fired a shot into the trees just to break it up. It stopped instantly, but a few seconds later I heard footsteps. Slow, measured, not running, just pacing, like someone walking the edge of the yard, daring me to come look. I stood outside with my shotgun until the sky went pink with morning. Next day, I went up to the tower one last time. It was wrapped. Every rung on the ladder, every handhold, every bolt tied with red yarn and neat little bows. The access panel was hanging open. Inside, a pile of birds. Dead, neatly stacked, eyes missing, not torn apart, just placed. I called Lexington and quit that afternoon. No excuse, no explanation, just said I was done. They sent someone else to cover my territory. 2 weeks later, he vanished. They found his ATV up the ridge, engine warm. No prints, no signs of a struggle, just gone. Now I live in Corbin, second-floor apartment, neighbors on both sides, cars outside. I don't hike, I don't camp. I'm a welder, been at it for over a decade now. Grew up just outside Knoxville, floated between a bunch of jobs until my cousin Caleb pulled some strings and got me steady work on a dam expansion out near Ellison Lake. The job was solid, union pay, decent hours, nothing too fancy, but enough to keep me from worrying. They offered shared crew housing right by the site, but I passed. 4 grown men crammed into a 2-bedroom trailer? Nah, I need my space. Especially after 10 hours of arc flashes and grinding noise. I can't sleep with other people breathing next to me. So I went looking and ended up finding this place a few miles out. A trailer tucked away in the woods. Rent was cheap, $300 flat, utilities baked in. Guy who owned it had moved to Florida but still rented it out through his nephew. Whole deal felt like one of those too good to be true situations. And yeah, maybe I should have seen that coming. The place sat about 6 miles off the main road. You pass this dusty gas station with one working pump, then a leaning Pentecostal church that looked like it hadn't seen a full congregation since the 80s. After that, the road turned into gravel, then dirt, then something barely wide enough for one car. GPS gave up halfway in, like it just threw up its hands. The trailer itself wasn't anything special. Faded siding, a few steps leading to a crooked porch, but it was quiet, real quiet. Trees wrapped around it so thick it felt like the place had been dropped into the middle of nowhere. At first, I liked it, even kinda loved it. I'd come home, chop some firewood, eat whatever I remembered to thaw, sit by the stove and drink a beer or two, maybe 3. No neighbors, no city noise, just a guy in the woods. I'd haul in groceries every Sunday. Aside from work, I didn't see a soul. Cell service was basically non-existent. If I needed to make a call, I had to drive 5 miles back toward the gas station and stand in the parking lot like some weirdo. But the forest behind the trailer, that gave me pause. It wasn't just dense, it was weird. The trees back there were packed so tight they looked fused together. You couldn't see more than a foot past the first row of trunks. No light got through. I once tried shining a flashlight into it at noon and the beam just disappeared like it got swallowed up. Locals called it the wall. I remember asking Caleb why they called it that, and he just gave me this look and said, "You don't go past it. Simple as that." Wouldn't say anything more. I thought it was just superstition, Appalachian folk stuff. Every backwoods town has its own version of ghost stories and monster tales. Then things started getting weird. I remember coming home late one night after a double shift. The porch light was off. I always left that light on, every single night. I even double-checked it every morning before heading to the site. But there it was, off. I figured the bulb blew. I went to change it and saw the cord, cut clean like it had been sliced with a box cutter. Not frayed, not melted, just severed. I stood there for a full minute, just staring at it. My skin felt tight. Told myself maybe a branch had come down weird, or maybe a raccoon with a grudge. The next day, I rewired it and installed a new bulb. Told Caleb about it during lunch. He just looked at me, took a bite of his sandwich and said, "Stay on your side of the trees." That was it. A few days passed with nothing unusual. Then, one night around 3 a.m., I woke up to total silence. Not the normal kind. This was dead silence. No fridge hum, no bugs, no wind against the siding, just this heavy, blank quiet. My body tensed up like it already knew something was wrong. And then the motion light out back flipped on. I sat up fast. That light only triggered if something moved near the bottom step. And it wasn't flickering like it caught a squirrel or a falling branch. It stayed on. Solid. I got up, walked over to the back door. Didn't open it, just looked out through the glass. Couldn't see anything at first. Then my eyes adjusted. There was a hand resting on the second step. Just a hand. No arm, no body. Pale as chalk with fingers slightly curled. Like someone was crouched just out of sight, keeping their hand there on purpose. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Backed up real slow, grabbed the tire iron from under the sink, and stood there, in the kitchen, waiting. After maybe 20 minutes, the light went off. Next morning, I went out and checked. Nothing. No footprints, no marks on the step, like it had never happened. I tried to brush it off. Told myself it was exhaustion, maybe a weird shadow. But I stopped leaving the porch light on after that. Figured whatever it was, didn't like the light much. Then the knocking started. 2 knocks, pause, then 2 more. Always around the same time, right around 3:05. Quiet, deliberate, like whoever it was knew I was awake. I never answered, never peeked, just sat there, gripped tight on the iron bar, trying not to breathe too loud. Then one morning, I stepped outside and found a single river rock on the doormat. Perfectly round, smooth like it had been polished, clean, too clean, the clean. I picked it up, looked at it for maybe 2 seconds, then tossed it into the woods. Didn't even think about it. I just didn't want it in my hand anymore. That night, I stayed at Caleb's. I laid everything out, told him the whole thing. He didn't even blink, just got up, opened a drawer, and pulled out this little tin box. Inside were tiny bones, like bird or rabbit maybe, tied together with red thread, covered in some kind of wax. Looked handmade, looked old. "What the hell is this?" I asked. "Just leave it where the dark starts," he said. I stared at him. "Seriously? Don't wait, just do it." So that night, right before sunset, I walked out back and stopped just before the forest got thick. You could literally see where the lights stopped touching the ground. I set the tin down right there, didn't say a word, didn't look back. That night, no knocking, no lights, no dreams. Next few days were quiet, normal even. I thought maybe whatever it was had taken the message. Then came Sunday. I was stacking wood out back when I saw something shift in the trees, way back in the dark. At first, I thought it was just shadows, but then it moved again. I froze, stared. Something was crouched low, just inside the tree line. Its limbs were long, too long, elbows bent backward like it wasn't built right. Skin pale and stretched like plastic wrap. Face smooth and wrong. No features, just 2 dark pits where eyes should have been. It didn't move, just stared. I backed into the trailer, locked the door, pulled every blind and sat there shaking like a kid hiding from a nightmare. Next morning, the tin box was on the porch. But now, there were 4 red-painted river rocks beside it. Each one placed perfectly. I didn't touch them. Didn't even get close. I called Caleb. No answer. I packed a bag, drove straight to his place, and waited on the porch until his wife came home. Told her everything. She listened, then just said, "You need to leave that place." "I've got a lease," I said. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Then break it, or they'll break you." I didn't go back that night, or the next. When I finally did, middle of the day, Caleb riding shotgun, The place reeked, like something had died under the floor, wet dirt and rot. Every cabinet was open, every drawer dumped. The fridge was wide open, food turning black, and the motion light? Gone. Not broken, gone. No bulb, no mount, no wires. We didn't say a word. I grabbed my stuff and we left. I never saw the landlord again. Never asked for my deposit back. Didn't care. My name's Jeremy, and I've pretty much lived out of a duffel bag since I was 20. You take the contracts where they come. You make your money and move on before anything feels too permanent. Anyway, about 5 years ago, I got this job that sent me out to a place called Laurel Ridge in Kentucky. Not a place you'd end up by accident. It's tucked way out there. Big hills, dense woods, a couple of tiny towns that still had rotary phones in the gas stations. The company was running new gas lines out into the ridge. They needed hands, and they were offering good money and a living stipend. I didn't ask too many questions. I just packed my gear and drove out. When I showed up, they gave us 2 options for housing. There were trailers parked near the staging site, set up like a little temporary camp with shared bathrooms, bunk-style setups, and a mess tent. Or, for a little extra rent, they had some older cabins scattered up in the woods, leftover hunting lodges the company had leased or bought up. No contest. I've never liked bunking with strangers. I paid the extra and got handed a key to a small cabin 2 miles up a gravel road that looked like it hadn't been maintained since the 80s. It was isolated, like really isolated. The road twisted up a hill through thick pine forest, and once you got up there, there was nothing but trees. You couldn't see any other cabins, no lights, not even the distant glow of a town. When the sun went down, it was pitch black. You don't realize how noisy the world is until you're somewhere with no hum of cars or buzz of streetlights. Out there, the silence had weight. The first few weeks were uneventful, brutal hours. I was getting up before dawn, driving to site, spending 12 hours wrestling pipe in the mud, then coming back too sore to care about anything but food and sleep. I barely even explored the place. Just threw my boots off, showered, and collapsed onto the couch every night. The only thing I noticed early on was how the locals looked at us. They didn't want us there. They never said it out loud, but it was clear. Every time I walked into a store, it went dead quiet. Nobody made eye contact, or if they did, it was with that tight-lipped stare like you'd kick their dog. One time, I was picking up some caulk and zip ties at a hardware spot, and this older guy near the counter muttered something as I passed. I didn't catch much, just the phrase digging too far. It stuck with me for some reason. Didn't think too much about it at the time. Figured he was just one of those people who think everything past their backyard is sacred land. Then, one night, I was sitting on the porch around midnight. I'd finished a long shift, and I was just sipping a beer and letting my joints unwind. The night was quiet, real still, and I was staring out at the trees behind the cabin when I noticed something moving. At first I thought it was a deer, but it was on 2 legs, tall, broad-shouldered. It moved between the trees like it knew exactly where it was going. No flashlight, no clumsy stepping on branches, just smooth, confident walking. 30, maybe 40 yards away, right where the slope starts climbing. I stood up without even thinking. The hairs on my arms stood up too. I squinted, trying to make it out, and just as I was about to call out, it stopped, and then it turned. I didn't see a face or eyes or anything like that. It was too dark. But I felt it, like the way you feel someone staring at you from across a room. It didn't move any closer, just stood there, facing me. I said, "Hey, you all right?" Just loud enough to carry. Nothing. No answer, no shift in stance, just silence. Then, after a few seconds, it turned and walked away, disappearing behind the trees like it had never been there. I didn't sleep much that night, kept getting up to check the window. The next morning, I went out back just to make sure I hadn't imagined it. The ground was soft from rain the day before, and I saw them. Tracks. Barefoot. Huge, human-shaped, but not quite right. The arch was too shallow, the toes too long, almost finger-like. I just stared at them for a while, then took a few pictures with my phone. Not that the pictures helped. Too blurry, not enough contrast, just looked like blobs of dirt in digital form. At work, I mentioned it to one of the older guys, Ed. Local. Grew up around Laurel Ridge. Quiet guy, but smart. When I described the prints, his face tightened. "You been locking your windows?" he asked. I told him no, hadn't thought to. He nodded once. "You should," he said, then turned and walked off like that was the end of the conversation. That night, I was sleeping light. Around 3 a.m., I heard tapping. 3 knocks, then a pause, then 3 more. It was coming from the window, right near the foot of the bed. The sound was sharp, distinct, not a branch scratching or some animal fumbling. This was Knuckles. I lay there frozen, listening. I wanted to move, to peek, but I couldn't make myself pull the curtain back. I just stood there next to the window, breathing shallow. Then it stopped. In the morning, I forced myself to look. Greasy handprints on the glass, 2 of them. One low, almost at knee level, and one higher, like someone had leaned in. No fingerprints, just smooth, flat palms. I didn't mention it to the crew. They already thought I was weird for picking the loner cabin. But that day, I bought a lock bar for the sliding glass door. I also picked up a knife at the gas station and started sleeping with it under my pillow. And I left the porch light on from dusk till dawn. 2 nights later, I stepped outside for a smoke and nearly stepped on something. A rabbit, dead, laid out on the porch. Its throat had been ripped open, eyes gone, and its legs were pulled straight like it had been posed. That was the worst part, how deliberate it looked, like someone had arranged it for me to find. I didn't hear anything, didn't see movement in the woods, just the quiet and that thing staring up at me with hollow sockets. I tossed it into the trees and went back inside, locked the door, sat down with my back to it, and stayed up until sunrise. Next night, around 2 in the morning, I heard footsteps. Not running, not sneaking, just slow, steady pacing around the cabin. I followed the sound from inside. It made one full circle, then another. Each time, it stopped at the corners, like it was checking for weak spots. Then, nothing. Next morning, I found something new. Stones. 7 smooth rocks laid out in a line just outside the front door, end to end, perfectly spaced. I didn't touch them. At break that day, I pulled Ed aside, told him everything. The tracks, the prints, the tapping, the rabbit, the pacing. He just listened, nodding slowly. But when I got to the part about the stones, he stopped chewing. "You need to leave." I asked him why. "That land ain't right. Been bad a long time. There was a family that lived up in those hills, had a homestead up there. Place burned down in '73, middle of winter. Whole cabin gone, no survivors. They found bones in the creek, some of them human, some not. Most of the remains were never found." I asked what happened. He said, "Some folks say they gave themselves to something. Others say it came and took them. After that, people started disappearing. Dogs, kids. You'll notice no one builds up there anymore. Till you boys came." I asked him straight out, "What's pacing around my cabin?" He said, "They don't like light. They don't like being seen." I stayed 2 more nights. I don't know why. Pride, maybe. Or maybe I just wanted to see it for myself. I kept every light in the place on. Sat in a chair with the knife in my hand, staring at the door. On the 3rd night, just after 2, the front door creaked. The handle turned. Slowly. Not forced, just tested. Back and forth, like fingers trying to understand the latch. Then, pressure. Just enough to make the wood groan, like someone leaned their full weight into it. And then nothing. Silence. I waited until the sun came up before I moved. When I finally opened the door, I saw no tracks. No scratches, just those same 7 stones. But now they were stacked into a tower, balanced, deliberate. I packed my truck and left that afternoon. Called the site manager and told him I wanted a transfer. He didn't ask why. I drove 10 hours straight, didn't stop until I hit a Motel 6 outside Manchester. I didn't even grab my bag, just left it in the truck. I don't know if the cabin's still standing. I don't care. My name's Mark, and I work as a lineman. Most of my jobs are way out in the sticks. Southwest Virginia, mostly, near places like Candler Hollow and Pine Ridge. Real off-the-map kind of spots, where people still use rotary phones and you lose cell service 10 minutes past the last gas station. We get called out after storms, a lot. Usually it's nothing major. Tree branch knocked out a line or a blown transformer. Quick fix and done. But last fall, around the middle of October, I got a dispatch that felt tough. It came in around 3 p.m., marked under a sector we called New Oak Bend. What stood out was the red tag next to the coordinates. Said, unmapped structure, no prior listing. Proceed with caution. Now that just doesn't happen. We've got records going back to the 60s. Every old shack or trailer in the hills is on file somewhere. So I called it in. Figured maybe it was just a clerical thing. Nope. Dispatch told me. Caller gave exact GPS, just one house with a line down. I offered to take it. Part of me just wanted to see what kind of place wasn't on the books. Plus I'm used to backwoods weirdness. I grew up about 20 miles from there. Figured I'd knock it out and be home by dark. I drove about 40 minutes on the main road, then turned onto a gravel path that barely fit my truck. After a bit, even the gravel disappeared. Just dirt, tree roots, and patches of moss. Should have stopped right there, honestly, but I didn't. It felt like I had to finish the job. Like when you get a splinter and can't let it be. The trees started crowding in. Not tall pines or anything normal. These were twisted and low, all black bark with no real underbrush, just wet leaves and thick mud. I had to roll my window down to push a branch off the side mirror. Then the trail dipped and I saw a clearing. At the center was this house. 2 stories, no grass around it, just a bald patch of dirt. The siding was old and gray. Half the porch had caved in, and the windows looked empty, but the porch light was on. I parked, threw my gear over my shoulder, and got out. The air felt flat, not cold, not warm, just still. No wind, no birds, no bugs, not even a single sound. I knocked on the door. Nothing. I knocked again, thinking maybe they didn't hear me. I was about to circle around the side when the door creaked open. There was an old man standing there. Looked like he'd just woken up from a nap. One boot on, shirt crooked, and eyes so cloudy it was like looking through fog glass. But behind that, there was this weird sharpness, like he was way more aware than he should have been. "You here for the light?" he asked. I nodded. "You called about a line?" "Been out 4 days," he said, stepping back so I could come in. "Phone line just started working again this morning." Inside, it was surprisingly clean. Wood floors, hand-woven rugs, everything looked handmade. No TV, no radio, no clocks. Just bundles of herbs drying in the windows and a wood stove with a little smoke curling up from it. "Where's your breaker box?" I asked. "Out back," he said. "Follow the line." So I went around, behind the house, and yeah, the line ran out to this thing. It wasn't a utility pole. Looked like somebody built it from peeled tree trunks, tied together with rope and metal stakes. The box was nailed to one side, and the lid hung open. The wire had been cut clean through, like someone used bolt cutters. I climbed up and patched the splice, but the whole time I kept glancing back at the house. The old man had moved. He was in an upstairs window now, standing perfectly still, staring down at me. Didn't wave. Didn't move at all. Once I got the power back up, I tested the line. It was good. I walked back into the house. The lights were on, but they were flickering, not like bad wiring. It was different, softer, like candlelight being blown in slow motion. He was sitting in this tall chair near the fireplace now, hands folded, looking at the floor. "You fixed it," he said. They'll come now." "Who?" I asked. He didn't answer, just sat there. I asked if he needed anything else. He looked up, gave this tired little smile, and said, "Best get gone before it gets dark." I didn't need convincing. I hiked back to the truck, reversed quick down the trail. The trees scraped the sides like they were leaning in. I checked the rear view a few times, but the road behind looked exactly the same as the one in front. For a second, I honestly couldn't tell if I was going anywhere. Then the truck just died. Engine cut out, like someone yanked the battery. Dashboard went black. I tried the key, nothing but a click. Popped the hood, battery looked fine, no smell, no smoke. I was halfway back into the cab when I heard something in the woods. Not footsteps, more like dragging, something big. I stood there, holding my breath, trying not to move. Then nothing. And just as I started to breathe again, every light on the truck lit up at once. Headlights, dash, dome light, all of it. Then the radio snapped on. First just static, then layers of voices. Whispering, fast and overlapping, not English. Not even close to anything I'd heard before. I reached in and shut it off. It came back on. Louder. I grabbed my flashlight and ran straight into the woods. No trail, no signs, just instinct. Behind me, the truck kept humming, that weird static following me. I didn't stop until I saw the house again. It looked exactly the same. Door wide open. Porch light still flickering. I don't know why, but I walked inside. The chair was empty now. The fire was dead. Just cold ash in the grate. I called out, nothing. The stairs creaked as I went up. Every door upstairs was open, except one. It was painted black and the paint was peeling in long cracks. From behind it, I heard this hutting sound. Slow, rhythmic, wet. Then a laugh. Small, childlike, but broken, like it was coming from a speaker running out of battery. I stepped back. The hallway light cut out. It got quiet, dead quiet. Then the door creaked open a little on its own. Just an inch, and something shifted behind it. Pale limbs, low to the ground, crawling. They didn't move right, like they weren't connected properly. I ran, fell into the banister, caught myself, kept going. Back through the trees, no idea where the path had gone, just moving. When I finally reached the truck, it was running. Engine idling like nothing had happened, door wide open. I didn't think twice. Slammed it into drive and kept going until I hit pavement. Then drove for another hour just to be sure. When I got back to the depot, I didn't say a word. 3 days later, we got another call from that sector. Same deal. No map, proceed with caution. I deleted the ticket, and I haven't been back since. I'm 33, wildlife biologist. Most of my time's been spent in hip waders, ankle deep in muck, swatting black flies and cataloging amphibians that most people wouldn't notice if they stepped on them. It's not glamorous work, but I like it. I've always been better at handling slimy things with forelegs than talking to people. There's a certain peace to it. Field work, I mean. It's quiet, predictable. You follow the data, take your samples, write the report. No one breathes down your neck. So when this contract came across my inbox, I said yes without blinking. 3-month field assignment in a remote section of the Appalachians, right where the West Virginia border gets all folded and wooded and forgotten. The job sounded simple. Monitor a population of salamanders that didn't fit known migratory patterns. They wanted data on movement, numbers, any anomalies. Easy enough. I was told I'd be working alone. That was the real selling point. They set me up in an old hunting cabin 30 miles from the nearest paved road. No cell service, no neighbors, no utilities of any kind. Just the cabin, a wood stove, a composting toilet, a couple of solar panels, and a mess of wilderness in every direction. The nearest town, can't even remember the name, something unpronounceable, was a good 2 hours away down winding dirt roads. I made one supply run on day one, stocked up on freeze-dried meals and camp fuel, and didn't plan to go back unless I had to. The first week went by exactly the way I wanted. Quiet, routine. I got my trail cameras mounted along the water lines, laid out tracking flags, took soil samples. The salamanders were right where they were supposed to be, maybe even more abundant than expected, which felt like a small win. Every morning, I hiked the same loop, swapped SD cards from the cams and logged what I found. Every evening, I boiled some water, rehydrated something that tasted vaguely like chicken and beans, and read until my headlamp flickered out. Nothing weird, nothing dramatic, just field work the way it's supposed to go, until day 9. That morning, I was reviewing footage from the trail cam I'd set low along the creek bank. It was meant to catch ground movement, little critters, that kind of thing. The timestamp said 2:43 a.m. At first, I thought it had caught a deer. There was a flash of movement low in the frame, fast. Too big to be a possum, too low to be a person. But something about it stuck with me, so I slowed it down. It wasn't a deer. It was skin, bare, pale skin, sliding across the ground like it had been greased. It was a human shape, or close. Crawling, but not on hands and knees. It was dragging itself, flat. Its arms and legs splayed out at unnatural angles, like the joints didn't line up right. The head was down, face scraping the dirt. It passed through the frame in under 5 seconds. No clothes, no pack, no flashlight, nothing. I sat there, staring at the screen for a long time. Eventually, I packed up and hiked straight back to the creek. I figured I'd find tracks, mud prints, disturbed leaves, anything. But there was nothing. The ground was soft from rain earlier that week, but it was untouched. No impressions, not even where I'd mounted the cam. Still, I raised the angle, repositioned the camera higher up on the tree, and added 2 more pointed in opposite directions. I told myself it was just a trick of the light, maybe some night hiker pulling a prank. The explanation didn't make sense, but it was better than the alternative. 2 nights later, I woke up in the middle of the night. I'm not a light sleeper. Years in the field train you to tune out raccoons, wind, even coyotes. But this was different. I woke like someone had snapped their fingers in front of my face. I didn't know why at first. I just lay there, blinking in the dark, trying to figure out what had pulled me out of sleep. It was dead silent, not quiet, silent. No rustling trees, no frogs, no night insects. Just this thick, unnatural stillness pressing in from outside the cabin walls. Then I heard it, a knock. Not on the door, on the wall, directly behind my head. I froze. It was a single knock, deliberate, not frantic or random, just one hard rap, exactly where my bed was, pushed up against the wall. Then, maybe 15 seconds later, another knock, softer, slower, almost hesitant, and then something scraped down the wall, a slow, dragging sound, like fingers or claws pulling along the wood grain from top to bottom. I couldn't breathe. My throat had gone dry, and my hand locked around the knife I kept in my sleeping bag pocket. I didn't move, didn't sit up. I just lay there, listening, gripping that knife so hard my knuckles ached. I stayed that way until the sky lightened. First thing I did when the sun was up was get dressed and step outside. I checked the wall. No marks. No footprints in the frost-crusted dirt. No signs anyone had been there. Then I walked the perimeter and checked my cameras. One of them, the one facing the trail, had been rotated. Not smashed, not knocked over by wind, just turned. It was pointed straight up at the sky. I touched it, and the plastic was warm. Warm like it had been handled recently. That rattled me more than anything else. I pulled all the SD cards, loaded up my gear, and drove straight to the ranger station in town. It took me nearly 2 hours, and when I got there, I told the guy behind the desk that I thought someone might be wandering the woods at night. He gave me this slow blink, then said, "Ain't nobody going out there this time of year. Nobody but you." He was right. That part of the mountains isn't exactly a tourist spot. No trails, no campsites, just miles of dense brush and drop-offs. If you go out there, you better have a map and a reason. I didn't tell him about the footage. When I got back to the cabin, the front door was hanging open. Not forced, not broken, just wide open. I stopped about 10 feet from the porch, one hand on my knife, waiting. Nothing moved, no sound. I eventually stepped inside, every muscle tensed. Everything was still there. Laptop, camera gear, my notes, but every drawer had been pulled open. Every cabinet door, every little storage hatch, even the trapdoor I kept under the cot was lifted up. Nothing was taken, just opened. That night, I shoved the table in front of the door and stayed up with the knife again, eyes wide, ears straining. Every time the wind shifted, I jumped, but nothing happened. Next morning, I went through the camera footage again. There was one clip. The cam I'd mounted higher caught it. Something, same shape as before, approached the lens just before 3:00 a.m. It crawled slowly, belly dragging, limbs twitching like it was struggling just to move. It stopped directly in front of the camera. And then it looked up. Its face didn't make sense. The skin sagged like it didn't fit the bones right. The eyes were wide and unblinking. The mouth just hung open. No words, no sound, just this gaping hole, like it was trying to pull the camera inside. Then it slid back out of frame. That was enough. I burned the clip to a USB, wrote a report marked urgent, and the next day I mailed the whole thing to the research office. Never got a response, not even a delivery confirmation. That night, I heard voices, faint at first, far off, just whispers moving through the trees. I turned off every light, sat in the corner of the cabin, and held my knife with both hands. The whispers drifted closer. Sometimes I thought I heard my name, sometimes laughter. It was all too quiet to be sure. Then they stopped. The next morning, I found something in front of the cabin, a perfect ring of bones, animal bones, small ones, clean, arranged carefully. Inside the circle was one of my trail cams. The SD card was gone. I didn't even pack properly. Just grabbed my boots, the USB backup, and the keys, left everything else behind, drove until I hit city lights. Slept in my car with the dome light on behind a grocery store. A week later, the company emailed me a termination notice. Just a bland paragraph saying the project was closed and all data had been archived. My login was revoked, that was it. I never said a word about what happened. Not to my colleagues, not to friends. I quit fieldwork and took a desk job in Charleston writing dry summaries for grants I didn't believe in. I've done jobs in some wild places. Crawled through collapsed mine shafts in Nevada with barely a foot of clearance, set up tripods on wind-whipped ridgelines in Colorado where you could see for 50 miles. I even once had to sleep inside an old water treatment plant in Missouri during a snowstorm. No power, no windows, just a dusty concrete box and the sound of dripping pipes. I got used to being alone in places most people wouldn't even step into. So when I say something unsettled me, I don't mean I heard a twig snap and ran screaming. It takes a lot, which is why what happened in Kentucky still sticks with me. This was back in 2003. I got a job through a subcontractor I hadn't dealt with before. They reached out asking if I could do a survey in this remote stretch of eastern Kentucky. Said they were looking into developing the area for ecotourism, trails, maybe some cabins, that kind of thing. Nothing sounded off about it. I get random one-off clients all the time. They sent coordinates, a topo map, a short briefing, 3 days solo in the woods, mapping natural features, flagging anything unusual. It sounded like a dream gig. Remote, clean slate, no one breathing down my neck. I packed the truck and drove out the next morning. The deeper I got into the hills, the fewer signs of civilization I saw. No gas stations, no mailboxes, not even any old rusted-out tractors, just trees. The main road turned to gravel, then to dirt. Eventually, it gave up entirely. I unloaded the ATV for the last few miles. Even the trail it followed felt barely used. overgrown, scattered with fallen branches and rotting leaves. I rode about 5 miles in and found a flat patch of ground near a stream. Not much to it, just a clearing with decent drainage, some flat rocks I could sit on, and trees spaced wide enough to hang gear if I needed to. I set up camp there. First day was fine. Long hike, good weather, no signs of other people anywhere. I logged a bunch of coordinates, drew up terrain sketches, flagged a couple of odd tree clusters that might affect future trail routes, typical stuff. But near sundown, I spotted something weird. At the edge of a slope, half buried under moss and dirt, was this little stone marker, about 2 feet tall. I almost missed it. Looked like it had been there a long time. At first, I figured it was some kind of old boundary stone, but it wasn't shaped like any I'd seen before. It was rounded and worn smooth, and all along the sides were these faint carvings, really rough spirals and angular cuts, like someone took a rock and carved on it with a nail. I took a few photos, marked the location, and moved on. Figured maybe it was part of some old homestead marker or maybe a local tradition I didn't know about. That night, while I was boiling water for dinner, I heard this sound. It wasn't an animal. I've heard raccoons, coyotes, all kinds of things moving through the brush. This was different. It was a long, dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across the ground. I froze, waited. It came again, a steady scrape, closer this time. From behind the tent, maybe 20, 30 feet out. I picked up the flashlight, switched it on, and stepped out. Scanned the tree line. Nothing. Not a leaf moved. And the sound had stopped. Just stopped. Like it knew I was listening. The next morning, I found a circle of small rocks in the dirt near the spot where the sound had come from. Not random. It was laid out deliberately, tight and symmetrical. In the center was a piece of tree bark, stripped clean, about the length of my forearm. On it was that same spiral, etched deep into the wood. It wasn't old. The edges were still sharp. I sealed it in a plastic bag and stuffed it in my pack. I didn't know why. Habit, I guess. Day 2, I hiked out a little farther, another mile or so into the forest. I found another stone. Same height, same shape, same strange carvings. This one was tucked in the middle of a thicket, almost hidden. I cleared the brush and touched it, and it was warm, like it had been sitting out in full sun, but the canopy above it was dense, barely letting in light. I checked the ground around it, no signs of anyone else, no boot prints, no animal tracks, just that marker and silence. That night, I set up a perimeter around the tent, fishing line tied to trees with tin cans strung up, classic field trick. If anything moves through, it rattles, gives you a warning. I didn't even make it to midnight. The whole line clattered at once. Not a breeze, not 1 or 2 cans. Every single one went off. I jumped out with the flashlight and my blade in hand, looked at the strings. Every line had been cut. Clean, straight cuts, like with scissors. I packed my things at dawn and moved camp again, about half a mile south. I didn't want to just walk out and leave the job half done, but I didn't want to stick around there either. Midday, I spotted claw marks on a tree. 4 long gouges about 6 feet off the ground. Deep, deliberate. They weren't made by a bear. I've seen bear scratches. These were too smooth, almost artistic. They tapered at the ends. When I touched one, it felt warm, same as the stones. Not hot, just wrong. That night, I didn't bother lying down. I sat in the tent with the headlamp on and the knife in my lap. Every little sound made my heart jump. Around 2 in the morning, I started hearing this whispering. Not words, just air moving, but shaped. Almost like breath trying to form syllables. It circled the tent. Low, constant. I stepped out. I couldn't take it anymore. Light in one hand, knife in the other. I caught movement. A shadow flicked between 2 trees, fast. I ran after it. By the time I reached the spot, it was gone. But on a nearby tree, another spiral had been scratched deep into the bark, and below it, a smear of blood. Not a lot, just enough. I turned around and ran. Didn't even think, just booked it back toward camp. But when I finally stopped and checked the GPS, I wasn't where I thought I'd be. I was back at the second camp. Same place, same trees, same rocks. I hadn't turned around. I know how to track direction in the woods. But somehow, I'd ended up right back where I started. Then the whispering came again, this time directly behind me. I spun around, nothing. I didn't wait. Left the ATV behind and just ran. Grabbed my pack, flashlight, and took off downhill, crashing through the underbrush until my legs gave out. Found a rock ledge and huddled under it until morning, blade in my hand, eyes wide open. Around midday, I found a narrow dirt path, man-made, too even to be natural. I followed it and eventually came to a shed, old, wooden, with a heavy steel padlock on the door. Right next to it was a stake with a laminated tag. The tag had the name of the company that hired me. Later, I found out that company didn't exist. No website, no business registry, nothing. It was like it had never been real. That evening, I stumbled into a guy hunting squirrels. Older man, smelled like kerosene, didn't ask a single question. Just gave me a ride to the nearest gas station. I called a friend to come get me. When I got back, I tried sending the photos and GPS files. The email bounced. The website was gone. The SD card? Every image file was corrupted. The bark I'd sealed in a bag? Missing from my pack? Sometimes now, in the middle of the night, I'll hear it again. 3 soft clicks, then silence, then 3 more. Sometimes it's right outside the house. I don't open the curtains anymore, and I haven't taken another job in Kentucky since.